The rain started at 11:47, which was 13 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin, and approximately 400 guests were already seated inside St. Augustine's when the doors at the back of the nave opened and let in a rush of November air and a man nobody had invited. He moved the way people move when they are trying not to be noticed, which is to say he did not move quite right, because the effort of invisibility has its own particular shape. He was 68 years old, thin, wearing a canvas jacket that had survived too many winters, and he slid into the very last pew on the left side of the church with the careful economy of someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. He pulled his backpack onto his lap. He looked at the altar. He did not look at the flowers or the guests or the cameras stationed at tasteful intervals along the side aisles. He looked at the altar the way someone looks at something they did not expect to see up close. Two things happened in the next 90 seconds. The first, a security coordinator in a dark suit near the side door noticed him and began moving. The second, the doors at the front of the church opened and the bridal party began its entrance, and the string quartet shifted into the processional, and 400 people turned to look toward the back of the nave. Nadia Voss appeared in the doorway on her father's arm, and the church did what churches do in that moment. It went briefly, completely still. She was 34 years old, and she had spent 12 of those years becoming one of the best pediatric surgeons in the state, and she did not cry easily, and she did not perform emotions she did not feel. And what showed on her face as she stood in that doorway was something quieter and more specific than joy. It was the expression of a woman arriving at something she had earned. She began to walk. She was 6 steps down the aisle when she saw the security coordinator moving toward the last pew on the left. She saw what he was moving toward. She stopped. Before we continue, if you believe that grace has no guest list and dignity belongs to everyone who walks through a door seeking shelter, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share this with someone who needs to believe in people again today. 400 people who had been watching her walk toward the altar watched her stop. Marcus at the altar watched her stop. His expression did not change the way most grooms' expressions would change. He simply watched her, the way he had always watched her, with the patient attention of someone who knew that whatever she was doing, there was a reason for it. Gerald Voss, her father, felt her arm tighten on his and said quietly, "Nadia." She said even more quietly, "Wait." She had seen the man's hands. Even from 6 rows away, even in the candlelit dimness of the back of the nave, she had seen his hands, large, slightly trembling, and held in his lap with a particular stillness. She had seen the olive green backpack. She had seen the broken zipper held closed by a safety pin. And she had seen his face. She did not know his name. She had not known his name 23 years ago either, when she was 11 years old and standing on a winter street in the dark at 7 in the evening because her mother's shift at the hospital had run long and she had missed the last direct bus, and she had taken a transfer route she did not fully know and gotten off at the wrong stop in a neighborhood that was not hers. She had been 11 and small for her age, and she had stood on that street corner for 4 minutes before she understood that she did not know how to get home from where she was. She had not cried. She had been the kind of child who did not cry in public, who had learned early that crying in public in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong hour was a kind of invitation she could not afford. She had stood very still and tried to think. A man had come out of a doorway 20 feet away. He was not young even then, in his mid-40s, she would have estimated later, and he had on a canvas jacket and work boots, and he had looked at her with his clear, pale eyes and said, "You lost?" She had said yes. He had walked her 6 blocks in the rain to the correct bus stop. He had waited until the bus came. He had not touched her, had not come too close, had maintained the careful, respectful distance of an adult who understood what a child alone needed, which was presence without pressure. When the bus came, he had put $2 in her hand, exact change, and told her which stop and said to tell the driver if she wasn't sure. And then he had walked away in the rain, without waiting for her to say thank you, which she had not said because she had been 11 and frightened, and it had not yet occurred to her that she would spend the next 23 years wishing she had. She had thought about him at specific moments. The night she got into medical school, the first time she lost a patient, the night her mother was sick and she sat in a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning and thought about all the small invisible threads that had held her life together when it might have come apart. She had thought about a man in a canvas jacket standing in the rain at a bus stop, and she had thought, I do not know his name, and I will never be able to thank him, and he saved me anyway. She passed the security coordinator without looking at him. She heard him say her name, Dr. Voss, and she kept walking. She heard the 400 guests shifting, rustling, the particular sound of a crowd recalibrating its understanding of what kind of event it was attending. She heard her father's footsteps pause and then, after a moment, continue, slower now, following her. She reached the last pew on the left. The man looked up at her. His pale blue eyes were clear and a little startled. The eyes of someone who had been prepared to be asked to leave and was not prepared for this. He looked at her dress, the ivory gown, the small white flowers in her dark hair, the strand of pearls, and something in his face shifted with a confusion that was almost painful to watch. She sat down beside him, not standing over him, not crouching in front of him. She gathered her dress and she sat down in the last pew of the church, on the wooden bench beside him, the way you sit beside someone when you want them to know they are not beneath you. She looked at him. He looked at her. She said, I don't know if you remember, 23 years ago, a little girl, corner of Marsh and Delano. It was raining. He was very still. She said, you walked me to the bus stop. You gave me exact change. You waited until the bus came. Something moved through his face that was not quite any one emotion. It was several things arriving at once. Recognition and something older than recognition, and something she could not name. He said, you were wearing a red coat. She had been wearing a red coat. She had not mentioned the red coat. She had not needed to. She did not cry in public. She did not cry easily. She was 34 years old and she had held a child's open heart in her hands, and she did not cry. She sat in the last pew of her wedding and she felt something release in her chest that had been held closed for 23 years, and she did not cry. But it was one of the closest she had come. She said, I never got to say thank you. He was quiet for a long moment. The church around them was completely silent. 400 people, one string quartet, one groom at an altar, all of them waiting with the particular courtesy of people who understood, without being told, that they were witnessing something that did not belong to them. He said, I just walked you to the bus stop. She said, I know what you did. She took his hands in both of hers. His hands were large, slightly trembling, very clean. She held them the way you hold something you have been looking for a long time. Then she stood up. She looked at the security coordinator who had stopped 6 feet away and was looking at the floor. She looked at her father, who had come to stand at the end of the pew and whose face had done something complicated in the past 4 minutes that she had not seen it do since her mother's funeral. She looked at Marcus, 400 guests away at the altar, who was watching her with the same patient, unhurried love he had always watched her with. She turned back to Walter. She said, Will you stay? He looked at the church. He looked at himself, the canvas jacket, the worn boots, the backpack with the safety pin. He looked at the 400 people who were looking at him. He said, I'm not really dressed for it. She said, You're dressed exactly right. She extended her arm to him. He looked at it for a moment. Then he took it, carefully, as though he was not sure he was allowed, and she walked him slowly to a seat in the 3rd row, beside her father's empty chair. Gerald Voss sat down on Walter's other side. He did not speak. He looked straight ahead at the altar. After a moment, he put his hand on the old man's arm, briefly, in the way men do when words are not the right instrument. Nadia walked back down the aisle. The string quartet resumed. 400 people exhaled. And Nadia Voss, pediatric surgeon, daughter of a nurse's aide, woman who had not cried easily in 23 years, walked toward the altar in her ivory dress with her mother's pearls at her throat, and the expression of someone who had just closed a circle she had not realized was still open. Marcus watched her come. When she reached him, he leaned slightly forward and said very quietly, "I figured it was something like that." She said, "How?" He said, "Because it's you." The ceremony was 18 minutes long. Walter sat in the third row between Gerald Voss and an empty chair and held his backpack on his lap and watched the whole thing. At the reception, Nadia found him again. She sat beside him at a table near the window while the dancing started, and the rain came down outside, and she asked him his name, and he told her, and she said it back once, carefully, so she would not forget it again. She asked him where he was staying. He told her the truth. She listened the same way she had listened in the operating room, completely, without interrupting, tracking every detail for what it meant and what could be done. What was done was not a transaction. It was not charity, which he would not have accepted, and which she would not have offered, because she understood the difference between removing obstacles and removing dignity. And she had learned that difference from a man who once walked 6 blocks in the rain beside a child, and did not touch her, and did not make her feel small, and waited until the bus came before he walked away. She did not give him money. She made 4 phone calls over the following week, to a veterans housing advocate, to a social worker she had met through the hospital, to a former patient's family who ran a small contracting company and had once told her they were always looking for people who showed up and worked hard, and to her father, who made the 5th call himself without being asked, and did not tell her he had made it until it was done. Walter was in stable housing by the end of the month. He worked 3 days a week for the contracting company, which was 2 days more than he had worked in 4 years, and exactly as many as he had told the advocate he thought he could manage to start. He did not see Nadia again for several months. When he did, it was in the hospital lobby. He had come to drop off a card for a colleague of hers who had helped with his case, and she was coming off a shift, still in her scrubs, hair down, the pearls gone. She looked different than she had in the church. She looked like herself. She saw him and she stopped. He said, "You look tired." She said, 12-hour surgery, 7-year-old. He said, "Did she make it?" She said, "She made it." He nodded. He looked at the card in his hand. He looked at her. He said, "I think about that bus stop sometimes." She said, "So do I." He said, "I never thought it was anything." She said, "I know. That's the whole thing, isn't it?" He thought about that on the bus home. The whole thing. A man walking a child 6 blocks in the rain because she looked lost and it seemed like the obvious thing to do. And that being across 23 years and a medical degree and a wedding and a life built from the bottom up with precise and quiet determination, the whole thing. He got off at his stop. He walked to his building. He let himself in with his key. He washed his hands the way he always did when he came inside, a habit he had never been able to explain. And somewhere across the city, in a hospital where a 7-year-old girl was waking up for the first time in 3 days, a surgeon in scrubs stood at a window and looked at the rain and thought about a bus stop and exact change and the particular grace of someone who walks away before you can thank them. She had thanked him now. 23 years later, in an ivory dress in front of 400 people. It turned out that was the right time. If this story moved you, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of courage, grace, and the quiet human moments that carry more weight than anyone knew. And tell us in the comments, has a stranger ever done something for you that you never got the chance to repay?